Welcome to Study 4 in our series on the Jehovah's Witness publication, Revelation, its Grand Climax at Hand. We continue in Chapter 2, the grand theme of the Bible, looking at the Jehovah's Witness doctrine of God's woman. Chapter 2, paragraph 7 reads, Genesis 3 verse 15 speaks next of the woman. Was this Eve? Possibly she thought so. Compare Genesis 4 verse 1. But a long-lasting enmity between Eve and Satan became impossible when Eve died more than 5,000 years ago. Further, since the serpent addressed by Jehovah is an invisible spirit, we should expect that the woman also belongs to the spirit realm. Revelation 12, verses 1 and 2 confirms this, indicating that this figurative woman is Jehovah's heavenly organization of spirit creatures. See also Isaiah 54, verses 1, 5, and 13. Of course, while some traditional readings, especially in Jewish interpretations, assume the woman is Eve, most Christian theological traditions have long moved beyond a literal Eve-only reading. Many Christian traditions, especially millennialist, Catholic, and apocalyptic Protestant ones, draw direct lines between the woman in Genesis 3, verse 15, and the woman in Revelation 12. However, they don't go quite as far with their claims as Jehovah's Witnesses do. This paragraph does not go into great detail to explain its claims. There is a lot packed into a few sentences, but it doesn't make much sense to newcomers, and it is not explained fully. It requires some previous knowledge of the theology behind it to fully understand what it means. First, here are a few points about this paragraph. 1. We know that many scholars do not see the serpent as Satan, and Jewish interpreters often do not see a messianic connection here. See our previous video for more information on that. 2. If the woman is Eve, the enmity wouldn't necessarily end when Eve died. The enmity is like a feud between two families, involving the offspring, not just Eve and the serpent. The phrase, "He will crush your head, and you will strike him in the heel," shows that if he is the woman's seed, and you is the serpent who is being addressed by Yahweh, then regardless of whether Eve is alive or dead, the outcome of this enmity is that the serpent and the woman's seed will be fighting. 3. There is no reason to expect that if the serpent is a spirit being, the woman would also be of the spirit realm. It is an unsubstantiated leap based on speculative theological reasoning, not grounded in the actual text or context of Genesis. 4. Revelation 12 only tells us that the woman is giving birth, and Satan is waiting to devour the child. There's no indication that the woman is a group of spirit creatures. 5. Simply pointing to Isaiah 54 doesn't explain how you would conclude that the woman is a group of spirit creatures. This is why this paragraph doesn't make sense to newcomers. With so much to unpack, this will take a few videos to explain. But to find out what is going on here in more detail, we can go back to a Watchtower article from the 1st of December, 1963. The article is called Victory for God's Woman Over Her Ancient Enemy. We shall not reproduce the text in full here, but there is a link in the description so you can read it for yourself. Instead, we shall discuss how they link Bible verses from different books to make their claims. When good scholars read the Bible, they always keep in mind that the books were written separately, by authors who come from different times, places, and traditions, and who were looking back on previous texts and traditions and reinterpreting them for their own purposes. The verses used by the article are as follows. Genesis 3, verse 15. They begin with the woman in the Eden story, interpreting her not as Eve, but as a symbol of a heavenly organization. Isaiah 54. They see this post-exilic prophecy about a barren woman who bears children as referring symbolically to God's woman, the heavenly organization which is producing spiritual offspring. Galatians 4, verse 26. Paul's Jerusalem above is our mother is linked to Isaiah 54, which he quotes, reinforcing their idea that this woman is a spiritual heavenly entity. Hebrews 12, at verses 22 to 24, the heavenly Jerusalem and myriads of angels are taken as being the same entity, and a description of this divine organization supporting the idea of a structured spirit realm. Revelation 12, verses 1 and 2. The pregnant woman in heaven is viewed as the climax of the theme, clearly not a human, but God's woman. Many Christian traditions have drawn typological or allegorical connections between these verses. For instance, seeing Genesis 3, verse 15 as proto-evangelium, the first gospel, foreshadowing Christ, Isaiah 54 as a metaphor for the church or Zion, Galatians 4, verse 26 as linking believers to a heavenly mother, the new covenant, Revelation 12's woman as either Israel, Mary, or the church. But these interpretations vary widely between Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant groups. No mainstream Christian tradition interprets these verses in a strictly organizational or angelic hierarchy framework, the way Jehovah's Witnesses do. Indeed, to some degree, the New Testament writers were reinterpreting earlier texts to support their new theology. New Testament writers often used typology, e.g., Jesus as the new Moses, Paul on Abraham's wives, pesher, applying Old Testament verses to current events, midrashic reasoning, creative linkage, and expansion of Scripture. But Jehovah's Witnesses take it to new heights. Where most Christian traditions use typology with multiple meanings, JWs tend to collapse typology into single organizational fulfillments. This goes beyond traditional allegorical theology, for example, Augustine or Aquinas, and turns flexible metaphors into a single fixed doctrinal system tied to JW ecclesiology. In our next video, we will start to talk about these verses in depth. We will skip Genesis 3, verse 15, and start with Isaiah 54. The Jehovah's Witness interpretation of Isaiah is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. So we'll see you next time, and don't forget to check the description for more resources.